So Dana from Hugging Face, she's a machine learning engineer, and she's going to talk about community-driven foundational models for robotics. So let's give her a warm Italian welcome with an applause.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, nice. Hello, everyone. My name is Dana. Thank you so much for inviting me and to give this talk. And it is one of my first times, for this topic because it's quite new. AI for robotics. As we know, robotics is becoming more accessible, which is thanks to also our effort at Hugging Face and everywhere. Most of the startups are opening in order to make robotics more accessible and make AI work for robotics. So so I'm happy to be here at this stage. Let's start. The topic of my talk is democratizing AI for robotics, how to build community-driven foundational models for robotics. So essentially, we will be speaking about VLMs, but in robotics, which we call VLAs. So, and just to put a small disclaimer, I don't have a robotics background, so this is just to show that at Le Robot, everyone without any background in robotics can do robotics, and that is in no way to prevent questions related to robotics in the end. And so to introduce myself, I graduated from École Normale Supérieure Paris-Saclay, and I did mathematics in my bachelor's. I came from Kazakhstan, and I joined Hugging Face last year. I started my internship as a machine learning engineer in vision language models for document understanding. So I also came from computer vision and natural language processing background. And so I started doing robotics last year. And currently, I became a part of the Le Robot team that is led by Rémi Cadenne, also a part of the Hugging Face. So I'm very happy to represent our team here. And essentially, I'm working on making cute robots smarter by using AI and building vision language action models. So let me introduce you to Le Robot. This is like a platform where we provide models, tools, data sets for real-world robotics in PyTorch, and not only real-world, but also simulation-related robotics. But we know that the need is mostly concentrated around real-world in robotics. So that's why we identified a need, and we try to provide resources for actually making it more accessible. So we lower the barrier to entry robotics. For example, I'm the living example of the person who didn't have any background in robotics and started doing AI for robotics. So everyone can do robotics because we are making the hardware cheaper, we are making models more accessible and optimizing the recording dataset pipeline, and also training the models for robotics, and etc. So, and we also encourage to share the data set and pre-train models, and we have a community consisting of 6,700 people in Discord. So the robotics is going brr, as we say. So let me talk about policies. So as I told you, we provide three main tools, basically policies, data sets, and tools. So here I will show you the video of our recent release. It's called Le Kiwi. It's a mobile robot, which basically has the same top, which is like SO100 arm, and then you have a mobile base. And this, it is performing an action. Which was obtained from the AI model. So firstly, we trained an AI model, which is called ACT, Action Chunking Transformer. And this is already the inference. And as you can see, it is able to grasp the cube and put it in the box, which wasn't surprisingly the case before, like 3 or 4 years ago. So we support state-of-the-art models in robotics at Le Robot. It's a GitHub repo. I think I missed to mention that. And we enable easy training and inference. So let's proceed. Let's move on. So we also have data sets. So on Hugging Face Hub, we have around more than 5,000 data sets uploaded in robotics. And given that we started this Little Robot initiative 1 year ago, so it's growing exponentially, and we encourage you to contribute because it's getting very easy to record a data set and upload it on the hub if you have this low-cost hardware that you can actually obtain by just using 3D printer and ordering some motors from China or from US. We are making it even more accessible. We are working on that. So now we also provide tools. So here in this, sorry. How to, yeah, it doesn't work. Now it works. So here's the dataset visualizer. That is one of our tools. So basically, all the datasets that you see, they are recorded by community and uploaded. And we have diverse, as you can see, diverse datasets. One of the outstanding ones was like chess dataset. I think it is not here, but we have the dataset where the person actually recorded how to play chess with robot arm. So in the future, it is possible to train AI model on this dataset and make a robot arm that can play chess. We provide tools for dataset uploading and visualization and replay. That's all in our GitHub, supported in our GitHub repo. So just a bit of motivation. Why do we care? So as we know, today's robots are very narrow specialists, meaning that they specialize in a very niche task, like fold the t-shirt, for example. They can do only t-shirt. Yes, it works well because we were able to achieve that by automating the task, and there is no room for error. I mean, there are some errors, but they are very small. It's not like in AI, but unfortunately, they are very niche tasks and hard-coded tasks, and it's very hard to scale with this tempo. So, and also real-world environments are very complex. For example, if you automate the robot to perform t-shirt folding at your house, it's not sure that it will work in other person's house. So you need to be very, very specialized, and it's very diverse. We cannot hard code all the homes and environments, unfortunately. So that's why we need AI. We need generalization that AI possess and is trying to improve. And also there is very small effort in pre-training. Unfortunately, unlike LLMs, robots only they cannot learn from diverse data, and we cannot use power of fine-tuning, which leads us to the next point, that we can actually try to use the power of fine-tuning in order to outperform specialized narrowly specialized robots, and transferring knowledge across tasks and environments. So what do we want is when we think about the ideal robot, it's like we want it to follow the natural language instructions, as all LLMs do, and all the agents, and adapt to different robots and environments, as I already mentioned. If I train the policy for my home, I want it to work on my friend's home as well, by default, like zero shot. And learn new tasks with minimal data. And we want it to scale. So current problems, we have different robot embodiments. This is getting more into robotics, I think. So we have different morphologies, arms, wheels, hands, drones. Even arms, they have different robot factors, meaning that the actions, they are represented in different format and even different dimensions as well. So some robot arms, for example, this one has 6 motors. That's why 6-dimensional vector as an input. And we have also another robots which possess more degrees of freedom, more motors, which means like we will have different input. So that's a problem. We think that it's not a problem, but a challenge, I would say, that we also need to take into account while building a foundational model. And we also have a generalization problem. Unfortunately, generalization is not, it's a bit different in a robotics context. It's even harder. Like if we train the data with a cube being in a certain positions on a data set, when we run it on inference, the cube has to be in the exact same position. If it deviates from the position for 1 centimeter, it will already fail. So it's that sensitive to generalization. That's why it's a very open problem that we are trying to solve, and I hope we'll be solving this with the power of LLMs and VLMs in general. As VLM become more and more advanced, the robotics will be more prone to adapt to these small shifts in the positions, object positions. So, and also it's hardly scalable. We don't have ImageNet and Common Crawl in robotics. Hence, it's not scalable. And also, real-world data is very fragmented. As I said, there are multiple robots with different embodiments with different format. That's why we have like data island problem, basically, where we have like a huge number of robots concentrated. Like we have many different robots with very small data per each robot. So that's what we call data island problem in robotics. And there is no diversity as well. So let's proceed. Let me introduce you the outline of the talk, just to structure it. We'll be talking about open foundational models in robotics. Firstly, we'll talk about the model, the shift from narrow task-specific models to generalizable robotic models. And also, we will be talking about how VLMs can be extended to VLAs, Vision Language Action Models. And we'll be talking about the data sets, how we can create an ImageNet for robotics, and how we can collect the data set. I will demonstrate, I will show small demonstration on how the teleoperation works. And we also, we'll be talking about the role of the robot in solving the problem and contributing to the creation of ImageNet in robotics. And then in the end, I think I will spend very little time on evaluation because it's a huge topic in robotics, but I will just mention how it is done. And yeah, just to complete the picture, the whole picture. So let's talk about the generalist robot policy. As I mentioned before, it's important to start from the inputs, right? What kind of inputs will be passing to our model and what kind of output we expect. So we will be, when we talk about the text, it's essentially the task describing the action. For example, pick up the Lego block and put it in the box. And it's usually very short, up to 50 characters command that is passed along the other inputs. So vision, when we talk about the vision, we're talking about the videos. And ideally, we want to use more than 2 cameras because we want to capture the object from different angles, multiple viewpoints. And that's the video input, the vision input. And then we also have states. States is basically the current robot's physical configuration, joint angles. We are talking about the proprioceptive state of the robot. And the actions. It's basically what I mentioned before. For this robot, for example, is 6-dimensional vector that represent actions, and it depends on the calibration and calibration values. The values can range from minus 180 degrees to 180 degrees, but it depends on the robots themselves. What is VLA? This is just a high level, low level, I always confuse this too, but like superficial details of how the architecture looks like. We have a VLM so now we are talking about the pre-trained VLMs like Qwen Vision Language Model and a small VLM developed by Hugging Face, PolyGem, and other models. Images, task, robot state as an input, and then we have like action decoder, which is the essential component that differentiates from the normal VLMs, I think, is that the way we generate actions, basically, how to put action head in order to get the correct output. So that's basically what we'll be discussing next. So right now, I skipped the state-of-the-art model which is called action chunking transformer, just for the time limit. But I think most of the current papers, they already show that flow matching loss outperforms the action chunking transformer. That's why I'll be talking about the generating actions like using flow matching objective. So yeah, this is basically how it works. How the network learns to predict actions. Basically, it's denoising the noisy actions. For each time step, we generate noisy actions. We add noise, sampling it from normal distribution, as you can see from the slide. And then we train the model using the flow matching objective. Yeah, as you can see here, I think it's quite clear. Yeah, let me just explain that on the architecture to make it more clear. So here, I added some state encoder and action decoder. Encoder, usually it's just a linear layer, just to put the actions into the same embedding space as the VLM embeddings. As we get the embeddings, for example, you can use any VLMs like PyLiJamma. Let's take small VLM as an example. And then you put images and tasks, and you get the embeddings. You already put the pre-trained model. Some research papers, they make an ablation study on whether it's useful to freeze the VLM or unfreeze it for training. Personally, from my experience, freezing works better. So yeah, so we get the embeddings from images and tasks. And then robot state. For robot state, we encode them using just linear layer. And then same for noised action, but we add them like was represented here. And then we encode everything into the same embedding space and pass it to the this block with cross-attention and self-attention. I think it's this is called this was taken from this diffusion transformer. Actually, this architecture was inspired by the GR00T architecture. It's an NVIDIA's robotics generalist model. And yeah, so we have basically a block of cross self-attentions, and then we pass it to the action decoder, where we denoise actions and get the actions themselves. And this step, like the step with diffusion transformer block, it can be repeated like up to 10 steps, I think. So, so this is the example of the real models that we have in robotics, the state-of-the-art models. Pi0 was developed by Physical Intelligence. This is a startup initiated just recently, also to work on creating generalist robotics policies. So as you can see, we have pre-trained VLM. We have Action Expert. This is the block with diffusion transformer. And then you can see that it is repeated multiple steps. I think in this paper they used 4 steps, and yeah. So and QT is action. QT is an observation state. So basically, the objective is to model the distribution, and OT is basically the vector consisting of observations and image input, and also language input. And yeah, so we condition generate the actions based on this vector of observation, observation vector. So yeah, this is the video from sometimes it doesn't work. Sorry. Ah, okay, sorry, thank you. So this is the video of this, the model architecture that I just explained to you. And as you can see, it was, I forgot the name of this robot. I think it's, well, anyways, it's a robot by manual manipulation tasks. And so this is the inference. So they've specialized on high-frequency actions, and it's a bit different from what we are doing at LeRobot, because at LeRobot we are trying to concentrate on the basic tasks, because we are trying to make it work on low-cost hardware, which is more challenging. But yeah, in the end, we aim to achieve to this kind of performance as well. So this is the GR00T that I was talking about. It's an open foundational model for humanoid robots. They also concentrate on humanoid robots. Essentially, this is the architecture that I already explained. So here it's more detailed in order to get a sense of how it looks like. So now let's talk about autoregressive action generation. Sometimes, so this field is a bit underexplored because state-of-the-art are mostly the model architecture that I already explained. But some research is focused on actually removing the action decoder, denoising, and just making VLM generate the actions directly, autoregressively, like as VLM would output the image caption, for example, the same way we want it to output the actions, basically. So here's the architecture. It's very simple, but here I think the most important component is tokenizer. And also the difference is that they take a robot state and discretize it, just I think using simple binning. And then in fast tokenizer, I think I'm going to explain it a bit in detail, but honestly, it's a very difficult concept for me as well. But yeah, eventually since we already have a tokenizer, the tokenizer works the same way that like any language tokenizer. And then we just use the same tokenizer to de-tokenize the actions. Now let's dive deeper and understand how fast action tokenizer works. I think, yeah, let's just discuss this first, and then I'll show you this diagram. So we first, as I mentioned before, there are the problems with different representation of actions. So there is a huge line of research in robotics on how to represent these actions effectively and how to create a standardized form. So this fast is like an effort in order to deal with this problem. So let me explain how it works. Firstly, we normalize the actions to ensure the consistency. And then we apply discrete cosine transform to convert from time domain to frequency domain. And then we round and scale these coefficients to reduce redundancy, and we combine them into a single sequence, prioritizing low-frequency components. This is very detailed. I don't remember myself why we prioritize low-frequency components, but yeah, that's how it's done in FAST. And then we apply BPE in order to compress the sequence by merging the frequent patterns. So this is the pipeline, but if you want to consider as a tool, just consider it as a simple tokenizer that you import from transformers and then use it in order to embed all the actions into the same embedding space and use them, treat them as real tokens, because tokens usually in robotics represent just the embeddings rather than tokens like in language models. So here we are actually treating actions as tokens. So here how they combined, so basically FAST was also developed by Physical Intelligence, the same startup that I was showing the video of before. And in their latest models, they actually try to combine the best of the two worlds, try to use the fast tokenizer and also the denoising flow matching objective, because they are actually trying to use the two-stage training strategy. So as you can see in the first part, in the pre-training, they use fast in order to make pre-trained VLM output the correct task-specific prompts. And also actions. And then they use pre-trained VLA. They use this in order to generate actions, because flow matching is actually proven to be more suitable during the inference. It results in smoother actions rather than autoregressive VLAs. But autoregressive VLAs are still quite new, so I expect they have a good potential in the future. So here's the description of the training strategy that Pi05 used. I already mentioned that briefly. So it's just, basically, it's like the two-stage strategies that most of the foundational models use in VLMs or LLMs. So let's now proceed to talking about community-driven datasets. So when to expect ImageNet in robotics? So here's the data islands problem that I mentioned before. So we have different embodiments, sensors, actuators with different degrees of freedom, and that are scattered and not condensed into a single island. That's why we call this a data island problem, because for each embodiment, we need to find a specialized treatment, and it makes very hard to scale. So essentially, we need to somehow connect these islands. And for example, NVIDIA proposed this approach, which is called data pyramid. To overcome this, so basically, they structure the data in this way that I attached their figure from the paper. They put all the web data in the bottom, and then they use synthetic data to connect real world with web data and real world data. But still, in order to connect this, we need like sort of connecting tissues in order to make the gap between all these layers less visible. And we believe that community-contributed data sets, sort of like web data, but for robotics with robot actions, will connect these layers and make more, like create a sort of more homogeneous pool of data. So yeah, and what do we need? So as I outlined before, we need ImageNet, the equivalent robotics data set. And also, we need to pull across cross-embodiment data. We need to have, ideally, we need not only to record the data with a particular robot type, but also with more robots, but I think it will come in the future. And also, for now, we have a certain robot type dominating in our data set, in our web data set. And then we also need a shared format, annotations, more organized structure of this data. And yeah, so basically, what we are doing at LeRobot in order to spark the ImageNet moment is we are trying to simplify the data collection. Now it can be done by running this command. Of course, if you manage to install the dependencies and the Conda environment correctly, you can run this command and then connect your robot, calibrated based on the tutorial that we already attach. And then we record the data set, and we have a standard format for that. At least we are already trying to standardize the format of the data sets recorded, started recording recently. And we are trying to convert the existing data sets to the LeRobot format as well, just to make sure they are all the same. And by existing data set, I mean the data set that were recorded in the academic labs, such as Droid data set. It's a very big data set with 10 million samples, but again, they are recorded in a controlled environment with by a particular group of people, and usually incorporating less diverse tasks, and also using high-cost hardware as well. So we still, yeah, we have big data sets, but still it's better to have also community-driven alternative in order to have like a more diversity in the pool of the data sets. And we also encourage the sharing. Like on Hugging Face Hub, everything is open source, so you can download the data set, train your model on it, and experiment. And we also have a community that is very driven, and Discord, we have Discord server where people exchange their ideas, they help each other. Honestly, I never met this kind of people who is eager to contribute and help with our tasks at LeRobot without getting paid. They are just voluntarily very passionate about what they are doing, and especially in robotics. So we have, here's the growth of the LeRobot community dataset. So as I mentioned before, the LeRobot was founded, not founded, but like initiated at Hugging Face 1 year ago, and during this 1 year, we observed this curve, which is nearly exponential. So it's really very impressive, and we want to take advantage of this and sort of organize all the data sets on the hub that we have to create an ImageNet and to improve it further. So we have a tutorial on how to record the data set. I think we can just briefly. So here's how the data collection process works. It has like, these arms are called Koch arms, or maybe Koch arms. And yes, so we step-by-step explain how to make it properly. And also we have GitHub README files attached to each tutorial. So there is no way of you getting it wrong, I think. And we also are there in Discord to answer the questions if you are encountering some problems. So how to collect the data set, basically. The difference with other inputs for other foundational models like LLMs, VLMs, is that we need to somehow incorporate the physical environment information into the recording when you are recording the data set. Basically, my team lead likes to provide this example with playing a football game. You can watch the game. You can also understand the rules, strategy, observe the players, and like you can collect an hours of your own data set of watching the football game and extending your knowledge about that, but you cannot really master it until you go to the field and feel the ball under your foot. And that's what we call physical practice, and that's what we actually need in robotics, and which makes everything complicated, including the data recording, and that's why we have less data in robotics, because we need this physical information. And in order to achieve this, in order to get the physical practice information from robots, we do it through teleoperation. Yeah, and for that, I prepared a demo just to show you how teleoperation looks like. And you can also try it during the break. I think the robots will be there for some time. Yeah, so basically, I can run just one of our scripts. Yeah, now it's running. Of course, everything was configured in advance. Let me put an object here, for example, my lipstick. And here's like how we teleoperate. Basically, when you record the data set, this is called follower arm, and this is the leader arm. And the leader arm, the one that you use in order to manipulate with the robot, is not in the camera field of view. So you can just, for example, grab the object. It has certain torque, force. And yes, so basically, it's quite smooth. And this is actually our recent release. It's called SO101. Basically, there was a SO100 arm that we a bit improved and make more optimal for the use. And we also provide a tutorial on how to calibrate it, even how to 3D print it, because it's actually accessible. We have 3D models available in open source that you can download and print. But the only thing that you need is to order VTEC motors. And then, yeah, basically everything is there. Myself, I also tried to assemble these arms, and it was quite easy. Our hardware engineer can do that in 40 minutes. I did it in 2 hours, but that was also because I didn't have much experience in this. But yeah, it's very easy to assemble, and then you can just, as I said, you can record a data set. For example, one of the simplest data set on how you can contribute would be like how to pick up the object and then put it in the box, imaginary box here, for example, and then you put it back. So this is how the data set is recorded, and then you feed this into the model architecture that I described before, and then you get the robot which can perform more or less well, depending on the number of episodes that you record. Of course, more data, more accurate the model will be. And also, you need to make sure that the object was placed into the same position. That's what I was mentioning before, that the generalization is a real problem. So that was a demo. So let's proceed to the evaluation. Unfortunately, I think there was a problem with evaluation before with LLMs because people didn't know how to evaluate the AI-generated texts. But now we are facing, I think they are more or less fine with now because they provided different metrics for evaluation. From my experience, I remember different blue, rouge kind of metrics, and maybe there are even more now. But now evaluation is a real problem in robotics because how will you evaluate if you don't have, in real world, what we usually do, we still apply human in the loop. We still put human in order to evaluate. Basically, you have a model, and then roughly you put this lipstick roughly in the same position according to your memory that you use during the recording the data set, and then, so it really relies on the human memory. Like, I should be the exact, very exact and specific, because otherwise it makes the model obsolete. If you put this here, of course it will not grasp it because it was simply not in the training distribution, data distribution. That's why it's very hard to evaluate this kind of models. You need to have a certain aid, like maybe even markers at images where you mark the position of the object. So yeah, and then it also depends on your human assessment, how to evaluate whether the action was smooth enough, precise enough. We call it success rate in robotics. So the success rate for real-world data sets really depend on human evaluation. And that's unfortunately a bit pain, not only because it's not quantitative enough, but also because you will spend time and effort in order to redo these evaluations. You have to be very smart with your evaluation. Like you don't want to reiterate on evaluation many times because it's simply very energy and time consuming. So that's why people usually evaluate in simulation, and then if they prove their concept in simulation, they are ready to transfer to real world, and then evaluate their model in real world. But that's also challenging because there is a sim to real gap, and real world is noisy, and there is no, basically in the end we are having no unified real world benchmark. So here I'm showing it's our lab, like the teamwork. Basically, we trained the vision language action model that we are going to release in the end of this month. And then, yeah, this is basically how it performs in real time. And we also made some manipulations with real-time inference, and the details are coming soon. This is like a small spoiler. And so, to end this talk, I want to encourage you to participate in the worldwide hackathon that we are organizing at Le Robot. So here on the map, you already see the number of local hosts. So basically, at these locations on the map, they are going to host our worldwide hackathon locally. So it's around 60 locations for now, and it's still growing. So there is a forum to register and to know more about the hackathon. You can participate online because we'll be providing our resources, our models, everything, tutorials. And if you want to organize it locally, you can also feel free to do that and reach out to us if you want to know more details on how to be a local host organizer. Thank you very much for attention. Any questions?
So, okay, one question. We just have time for 2 questions. We're running late.
First of all, thank you for the talk. It was very, very interesting. And it's not easy to be the icebreaker, so congrats. So I have a question. As far as I understood, the action model is the one that actually does the inverse kinematics. So gives the array of angles for all the joints. So I'm wondering, how can you, for example, specify the dead zones, so the parts where the joints or the end effector cannot go, or in general, how can you provide or guarantee safety in terms of position and its derivatives, so velocity, acceleration, and jerk limits, or positions in general?
Yeah, so very nice question. Thank you. It's actually very robotics related, I think, but still let me try to reply to answer that. So we have, in the approach that I mentioned that involves fast tokenizer, this one, basically they try to set like a safety constraint, I think, to the problem that you mentioned. So they have a if-else statement, basically, that if the range of generated actions exceeds certain range, then they will just generate the tensors of zeros instead of the actual actions. And then, yeah, in practice, it was a bit difficult because the model, in the beginning, it still generates the zeros, the tensors of zero, but at some point it needs to learn, right? So. Yeah, so it's currently an open problem, and this model is already ported in LeRobot GitHub repo. So if you have any experience in that, we encourage you to take a look and maybe put some comments in the pull request. That would be nice. But I hope I was able to answer your question. Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. We do have one last question.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I have a question related to the data island problem. So basically, I'm very new on this world of robotics with models. And from my perspective, what I know is that this problem can be solved, for example, with reinforcement learning. So you can generate a lot of data, and in this way, you don't need to show to the model manually as you do with the data set, because for example for the companies, Chinese companies, and also Boston Dynamics, they are using reinforcement learning in order to train the robots. And my question is, this data set that you are collecting with Hugging Face for robotics, for which task is aimed to what kind of problem it's going to solve?
That's a great question. Sorry about I really forgot to mention about the really important component of LeRobot team is reinforcement learning. We have actually guys working on reinforcement learning policies, and there is a policy called HERL, I think. Human-in-the-loop reinforcement learning, maybe? Yes, that's the name of the paper. And yeah, we are trying to implement this in LeRobot. So essentially, we are tackling not only imitation learning related problems, but also reinforcement learning. But most of the data sets right now uploaded on the hub, they are more for imitation learning problem. But when we release this human-in-the-loop reinforcement learning algorithm, we expect the number of data sets for RL to increase. But personally, what I observed from the team, I think they are really making good progress. I think simulation problem is it's a big pain for reinforcement learning especially. But we saw some small progresses, like when we tried to manipulate the robot running the RL algorithm, it is able to move the cube after 10 demonstrations. It is able to move the cube to the correct position that was present during the 10 demonstration, which is, I think, quite impressive for the people which are familiar with reinforcement learning. So I think in the future we plan to have more. But to answer your question, for now, the current state of the data sets are centered around imitation learning task. So thank you for your question. That was a really great question.